So I just finished watching the first episode of Merc StoriA. I think that's how you say the name. And the only reason why I decided to give this series a chance in the first place was because when I saw the cover of this series, I was like, well, this looks kind of cool. I like the art style and, I like the color palette. And, it seems like I might enjoy it since it's a fantasy setting, an adventure setting, which I really like. So I decided to give the first episode a watch. Now, after watching it, I do say it's not bad, but it's not really good either. I do think that it's one of those type of series that you could just chill and relax to, and it's probably a series that some are probably going to enjoy quite a bit. It does feel like after watching the first episode, though, that it's mainly meant for maybe either the fans of the game or for younger audiences. Now, from what it appears from this first episode, there doesn't seem to really be any dark themes or anything too dire to where you're like, oh, I need my darkness in the series. It doesn't really seem to have that. However, something like that could happen, which I'll get into later on in this first impressions. But from the first episode, it's okay. It's nothing grand. It's nothing, crazy, but it's nothing bad. But besides that, I think it'll be somewhat of an enjoyable series to watch, especially every single week on a Thursday. It does have the requirements for a good series. I mean, it has interesting characters that can, bounce off each other with their quirky personalities. It has a very unique setting with these monsters that, only healers can really tame the monsters. And if these monsters aren't healed, then they'll just go on a typical rampage and start hurting everyone around. And then also, apparently, there was a missing father, and then that's pretty much all we know at this time. I mean, the presentation, like the start of Merc StoriA, is good enough to have a good, starting point for a story, especially for a game. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of adventure games I played throughout my day. I love RPG adventure games, and seeing the way this started, it reminds me a lot of that, like a classical adventure RPG game, to where it starts off all bubbly, kiddie, enjoyable, but then as the story starts to ramp up, it gets very serious, and you're like, whoa, and your mind just explodes. And I think this might be one of those series, especially with some of the things that did happen throughout the episode. So number one, we start off with a very young MC, to where his father comes home, and he's like, hey, here's some gifts. He gives his son a bottle of water, like this jar of water, whatever, and then he gives his wife, a pretty piece of jewelry. And it seems a very casual scene and all that. The son's like, oh, you should have got me better. How much you pay for it? Only 10 gold coins. That's what he says. Which is like, oh, that's cheap. And it just seems like the father's just, is being an adventurer, just making money, and then he was constantly gone. He was always away from the house. It didn't seem like he was necessarily a bad father, because he was around for his family. He was caring for his family. He did enjoy being around them, but he constantly had long jobs. He had to go out for long periods of time to be able to be an adventurer, to be able to do what he needed to do, probably quell monsters or whatever. But the point is that one day the father did not return. That's what was stated early on in the episode. The father never returned, and then we had a very sudden time skip, which that's probably the biggest problem with this episode, is that there's some really sudden time skips that are so jarring you don't really even know. It's out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, there's a time skip. You could easily miss it and not really be paying attention at all. And I think that's probably the biggest flaw with this first episode, is something like that, because some might be lost with just what really happened at the beginning of the story, with the setup of the father disappearing, then some time passed, and then now as the boy has grown up just a little bit, he's now probably going to start seeking out his father to see where he is at, maybe. That's what was at least presented with the first episode, what I got. Let's talk about the characters. So the two main characters, the little water bottle fairy and our MC, the main male character, they have quirky personalities. They do have their own little flaws and little quirks about them that make them stand out. But they're nothing too unique to where I can say this character is amazing and is probably the best character of this anime season. But that's where character development comes in, and it can easily make these characters amazing. But from their base presentation, they don't really have a whole lot going on. It's not like a blank slate like maybe what happened in Goblin Slayer, but overall, it still needs a little bit more work. There needs to be a little bit more characterization in development, because the MC apparently is afraid of monsters. That's one of the big things about this first episode that mainly it wanted to nail into you, is that the main male character, he's scared of monsters, even tamed monsters. He just doesn't want to be around them. He's scared of them, but he's a healer. And in this world, healers can heal monsters, and what that means is that an evil monster will turn into a good monster. It's kind of like a form of purification. That's how you can view it. And so, a person that's a healer, that most likely is very gifted, is scared of monsters, doesn't want to be around them. But in turn, he has this little bottle fairy that's around him, which is obviously she's a monster as well, but he's completely fine with her, which I think that will eventually be explained. But the point is that he is terrified of monsters, which is one of the key parts of his personality. On top of that, he's kind of a wimp. He's weak. And I feel like, once again, this is where characterization and development's going to come in, to where he's going to get a lot stronger, because as he goes on an adventure and he meets more people, obviously he's going to get a lot stronger. He might be someone that's going to be able to get things done. However, if he really is a healer, then he's probably not going to be a physical fighter. This is like a typical RPG, to where a healer's supposed to stand in the background. Then obviously he's never really going to be probably physically strong. He's just going to be like a spellcaster or whatever. So he does need to find a tank in some way. I mean, I'm assuming the Bottle Fairy most likely is like his familiar, or is probably going to be someone that maybe is like a mage or something, and then a tank's going to come up to where they're going to be able to soak up all the damage for someone like, you know, our MC to be able to cast healing magic to quell monsters and calm them down. But that's pretty much what I got from the first episode. And also, the Bottle Fairy, she is someone that really loves shiny things, like sparkly shiny things, which does fit with some themes of fairies and stuff, so I think that's pretty okay. Nothing wrong with there. It's just a typical thing you would kind of see with fairies. But that's pretty much all the episode was really about. I mean, besides the little subplot of, you know, this stink bag that can apparently repel monsters being stolen by a monster. Don't even ask me how that happened. But a stink bag that repels monsters was grabbed by a monster, dragged out into the woods, got the MC in trouble, and then he healed the monster at the end of the day, and all ends well, and he goes off on his journey. That's the first episode. Now, am I going to continue watching? Probably. Am I going to continue reviewing it? Maybe not. But I do think it is a good series. I don't think it's necessarily bad. I just feel like there needs to be a lot more here to keep people's attention, not wanting to give up on it. Because if it has something like this continuously, like this episode, I feel like people are going to drop it pretty quickly. Definitely around the third or fourth episode, people just start falling off of it, and it's not really going to be that popular of a series. I definitely can see that. But I'm not saying the series is bad. I'm just saying that if it doesn't do something to really catch people's eye and attention and, you know, grab them, then they're not going to continue watching it. But that's my first impressions on Merc StoriA. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about the first episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Please be honest in the comments below. And I love you guys. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.